How do you follow that? Fortunately, we're very lucky to have somebody who can follow that, because next we have Professor John Guillebaud, who's really returning by popular demand to give his expert advice on whatever he wants to give us expert advice on, because whatever he's going to give us expert advice on, it's very expert. Thank you, Sir John.
Thank you very much indeed, Terry, for that nice introduction. As you say, it's a bit difficult to follow that, but I'm not going to try and compete. I'm going to link a bit with him, though, as you'll see. My title is How to Miss Out Periods and Have More Margin for Error When Missing Out Pills. And my subtitle is The 21/7 Regimen for the Pill Should Now Be History. Linking back to Sir Tim is this slide here. Because he's an environmentalist as I am, and although some of the things he said were a bit scathing of the sort of zealot type environmentalist, which neither of us are, he's certainly got his heart in the right place, as I believe I have too throughout my career. I've been an environmentalist since I was a medical student, and I took up family planning because I was a doctor, to be a neophyte doctor, and to me, after attending a lecture which kind of transformed my thinking, to me, the time had come to see that family planning was a crucial part of survival of the planet. Because as this picture shows, we all have footprints, and it isn't just the size of our footprints, which we should all try and reduce, but it's also the number of feet on the planet. And all my working life, I've followed that line and promoted that thought. Footprints. I try and reduce my carbon footprint. I hope all of us are doing the same thing, trying to reduce our footprints. I just cycled here from Oxford to give this lecture. Okay, I did hitch a lift as far as South Parkway, and after that I came on my Brompton. But that's just a part of reducing our footprints. But you have to remember that a greenhouse gas emitting and habitat destroying city for 1 million extra humans is built somewhere in the world every 4 days. Imagine that, since last Monday. 1 million extra people, population of Birmingham, and on into the future. It just is totally unsustainable, isn't it? And so all strengths to what Sir Tim is doing, cleaning up horrible pollution on the land and preserving species into the future and finding ways to produce more food. Fantastic. All of that we must all do, but also we need family planning. Voluntary family planning, no coercion. This slide I'll flash up and you can look at it and then I'll move on. So my main topic, is the combined pill. And you may say, that's old hat, surely. We've had it for 60 years. Everybody in this room knows about the combined pill. It's something we've all done as part of our work in general practice since we began work. Well, I think it isn't. There's something we've not been taking enough account of. What is news? Good learning requires some unlearning. And I want us in this room to be unlearning something. And that is to unlearn the idea that the combined pill is a good method of contraception. It is not, if it's taken 21/7. And the crucial number there is 7. The efficacy of the combined pill in the real world is utterly dreadful. According to the best data from Trussell, for USA pill users, failure rates per 100 women in the first year of use, with perfect use, is consistent and correct. It's wonderful, 0.3 per 100 by the end of that first year. But for typical ordinary use, it's 9 per 100. Take it to 1,000, it's 3 per 1,000 or 90 per 1,000. And that's US data, but other countries have very similar data. It's an order of magnitude difference. Why? Why should it be so different? That's what this talks about. And certainly, why do we go on telling women, ordinary women, that the pill is highly effective? Perfection is rare, folks. Hands up those of you in this auditorium who think you're perfect. There's usually one hand goes up and it's a chap at the back. So if we're not perfect, how do we expect our patients to be perfect? The typical use failure rate could be much lower than it is. The perfect use failure rate could approach to 0. How? Simply by modifying 21st century prescribing to take account of that 7-day pill-free interval. Let me take you through the history. The pill was invented by some amazing people who should have got Nobel Prizes. Pincus was the physiologist, pharmacologist. John Rock was the gynecologist. Carl Djerassi was one of the backroom boys making the chemicals, norethindrone. John Rock invented the 7-day pill-free interval. Now, there was data for the pill. There was lots of data that they generated with the technology they had at the time. You're looking at the hormones of the menstrual cycle, etc., that showed that the pill suppressed the ovary. So they had good data for that. But what John Rock wanted was to have a method which, first of all, would reassure people it worked all the time by getting a withdrawal bleed. But second of all, his real motivation was he wanted the Pope to approve the pill for Catholics. It's interesting, he thought therefore he had to have this regular withdrawal bleed, and when, sadly, he failed to convince the Pope, because Humani Vitae came out 10 years later, he left the Catholic Church himself. It's worth Googling him. It's an amazing story, how his faith evaporated because he thought the Pope was so wrong. So the combined pill was devised in the 1950s and first marketed in the early 60s. It was unique, the world's first ovarian suppressant, a real credit to those pioneers. Yet, John Rock supplied it to women with a unique instruction for a contraceptive. Namely, please don't take it at all for 7 days, 13 times a year. Now stop and think about it. Why would you do that? Why would you unsuppress the ovary that you'd beautifully suppressed? That calamitous decision, based on the calendar, it was based on the Jews and the Chaldeans who 1,000 years ago or more, 2,000 years ago, had invented the 7-day week. It had no data. But as it says here, it permits, unsurprisingly, varying degrees of return of ovarian follicular activity during the pill-free interval, which I call the PFI, or if you like, the contraceptive HFI, hormone-free interval, if you're thinking of some of the other ways of giving these hormones, like the ring and the patch. Data emerged, and it emerged already four decades ago. And in my view, we have been unbelievably slow to apply that data, because the data emerged about the pill-free interval. We found, when ultrasound scanning came in, that you get pre-ovulatory follicles growing during that pill-free interval. We found that estrogen rises during that pill-free interval, in both cases because of the absence of the contraceptive. You've been there, you've had the contraception going on, and then you stop it. So strangely, when you stop to think about it, for 7 days. And this slide is crucial. In the top, you see the fluctuating levels of the hormones going up and down on a daily basis. And of course, stopping coming up to the pill-free time. Unsurprisingly, in the bottom half, you see the rise of estradiol. That's the natural hormone from the ovaries. And look particularly at the very wide standard deviations. They are standard deviations. This is a study I was involved with in 1978, heck of a long time ago. And you'll see how some women, down at the bottom, get very little return of ovarian activity. So that's why the pill works as well as it does, because a lot of people are able to maintain their suppression right through the pill-free interval. But there's a vulnerable minority, which latest work showed was 20% of the women, in whom, up at the top of the range there, you get pre-ovulatory follicle, like the last slide showed, or close to it, anything above 10 millimeters in size, growing up to 15, and you get higher estrogen levels. That slide, actually, the bottom there, is real work as far as the estrogen is concerned, but it could equally well be showing the growth in millimeters on average of these pre-ovulatory follicles. And you see those vulnerable women are only not getting pregnant if they have sex in the pill-free interval because they are on time starting the next packet. If they're one of those vulnerable ones at the top of the range, they're in big trouble if they miss even just 1 or 2 pills, extending the pill-free interval. And this study is again a long time ago. It's in 1999, I think, by Sullivan et al. And it showed that shorter PFIs allow less return of ovarian activity. If you can see there, the brown line, when you only have a 4-day pill-free interval with this particular formulation, you get much less growth of arrival of estradiol in the urine as they were doing this slide, but they also simultaneously looked at the follicles, and they're also not growing nearly as much in a reduced or shortened pill-free interval, 4 days in that case. So the message is 4-day pill-free intervals lead to much lower levels of estradiol, indicating insufficient time for significant ovarian activity, even in that vulnerable subgroup. And of course, an absent pill-free interval must make the pill even stronger still. It's retaining its wonderful efficacy without us, by our stupid 7-day pill-free interval, weakening it on a regular basis 13 times a year. Now you may say, but we know that the pill is so effective because it has these adjunctive contraceptive effects. For example, the progestogen. This is a lovely slide showing under the scanning electron microscope the cervical mucus. And at the top there, that's under the influence of progestogen. You see how the mucus is very hard for sperm to swim through, and that is the backup mechanism, strongest backup mechanism there is to the anti-ovulation effect of the pill. And it applies to the combined pill as well as the POP, because of course there is a progestogen in combined formulations as well. But you can't expect this backup mechanism to be at its most effective when you've had 7 days of non-ingestion, can you? So it's a really bad triple whammy of trouble at the end of the pill-free interval when you haven't got you might be likely to ovulate and you haven't necessarily got the progesterone effect either. This is a caption competition. You can shout from the floor if you like, but I'll give you the title. This is a normal cycling female. Sorry about the corn, but it is a teaching point, because in fact our patients for the last 60 years have mostly thought they were still normal cycling females, because following on John Rock's idea, they think they're having a cycle and they're having these withdrawal bleeds, which are not true periods at all, and therefore they panic when they missed a couple of pills in the middle of a packet, because they think that must be the dodgy time, as it's the dodgy time in a normal cycle. Not realizing, not being told by us actually, as they should be, that of course that is a wonderful time to miss pills if you must, and what you mustn't do is lengthen that pill-free interval beyond the too long 7 days it already is. I teach, and I hope you do, some of you, that the pill is not a cycle, it is more like a horseshoe. You tell the woman, the pill takes your cycle away. What it gives you, if you take it this old-fashioned way, is you take it, you can make a horseshoe with your own hand, you start taking it, first 7 pills put the ovary complete to sleep, and then all the other pills you take, whether they're 14 or 140, just keep the ovary suppressed, and then you take a break. And in that time, your ovary, which was asleep, what do you think it does? And you'll find that any woman with any educational attainment will not find it difficult to realize that in that time, it must be a risk that their sleepy ovary might wake up. And this is something I think that we've not been doing in these 60 years. But you see, as it says there, no pill hormones, so the ovaries may start preparing to ovulate in some women. And that makes for the user's main problem, because the greatest problem is late restarting, when you don't start next packet on time. And that particularly applies to teenagers. And starting next Monday, once you've heard this talk, I hope that all of you will take steps never to give teenagers in particular a 7-day pill-free interval. There's a take-home message for you. Teenagers don't deserve to have their pills made weaker, if they're on the pill at all, and it's better they're on a lark, but we'll come back to that. So the message for the current pill taking should be, I must never be a late restarter, because of what I call a triple whammy. Namely, it's the time that is most risky to miss, and remember it's the 2 points there, the ovulation risk and the lack of progestogen effect on the mucus by then, relatively. And of course they're likely to have sex because they had a period, they've been bleeding, so they're very likely to have sex after that bleed. It's the time that's very common to miss, and it's the type that is most unrecognized by most clients who think they're normal cycling females as even being a pill missed. They don't ring us up, do they? They don't look at their leaflets. I'm just a bit late starting. Do you agree? Isn't that a disaster when you think about it? So at least for the time being, until we get everything to change, as we're trying to do, this is a campaign that my colleague Anne McGregor and I are about, and you're the first to hear about this virtually. We should teach them the mantra, I must never be a late restarter, I must never be a late restarter, I must never be a late restarter. But, and this is the real point, surely we should bridge the gap. Not have the stupid 7-day gap, and then you wouldn't have to be so worried about being a late restarter. Bridge the gap. You can tell she's the driver, she's got the keys, you can tell from her face as well. Don't ask me how she got out of the car. But we can bridge the gap, folks. Why have a stupid gap that was invented 60 years ago with no data at all? And now I come to the first part of my original title. You see, menstruation is unnecessary. This chap, Elsie Marcutini, wrote this book. Is menstruation obsolete? Yes, it is. There are no data that either periods or withdrawal bleeds have any intrinsic health benefit at all. It's a fact. No, and what's more, endometriosis and other conditions are promoted by it. Nancy Loudon, way back in 1977, described tricycling, and I think most of you in this room have heard of tricycling, where you deliberately run 3 or 4 packets in a row together. But Nancy and the others, and me included in those days, we only saw this as a way of having less periods. Who wants to see bloody periods anyway? You know, it's a way to take the pill. Maybe a good way to take the pill, but we didn't see this efficacy advantage quite so strongly as some of us now do. Neither menses nor pill periods have any known health benefits. Sustained combined pill use with absent or fewer and shortened pill-free intervals. That's what the story is about. Leiden described it way back. And I've been writing about it in my books in a very positive way ever since then. But what's changed now is we want this to be the norm. It led much later to seasonally and seasonique in the US market, where you take your pill, the actual packaging, the actual marketing is to have 4 packets in a row and then a break. And so it's called seasonally because you have a period in the summer, in the autumn, in the winter, and the spring. So you only have 4 periods a year seasonally. Quite a clever name. You know, when they brought Levanel on the market in America, they called it a very sensible name. They've got good names over there. Plan B. Plan B. So seasonal is a good name. And it's marketed. So what I'm suggesting here is, why isn't it here? Why haven't we got seasonal in this country? For heaven's sake. Could be. It's been on the market for 15 years. In 2003, Leslie Miller et al. Did an RCT of the step further than that, which is, say, 365, 365. The 84.6, which Loudon did, was an option, but why not do the whole thing? And there was a proper RCT comparing with taking the pill the ordinary way. And the findings in the 365-36 group follow now. What they found in that RCT was that if you take it continuously, yes, you do get dribbling bleeding, but after the first 3 weeks or so, you do tend to get unwanted irregular bleeding. But they got amenorrhea, or at least oligomenorrhea, by 68% by 3 months and 88% by 12 months if they persevered. Bleeding and pain days per year, obviously less, because they were no longer getting 13 times 3 or 4 days of bleeding, which you get routinely when you have pill-free intervals. So there's about 40 days you don't have to go to Boots. Another advantage, no need to have menstrual protection at all. And it led to marketed products in America. They've been ahead of us a lot in America. Anya, Librel, and now Amethyst are on the market as continuous 365, 365 pills. Edelman et al. Did another RCT 3 years later, comparing a slightly weaker pill, LNG 100 and norethisterone 1000 plus ethanol estradiol, either 20 or 30. So in other words, they had 4 formulations being looked into, and they found that the loestrin 20 combination, which is norethisterone 1000 plus 20 micrograms of estrogen, gave the best results with respect to bleeding, which is the downside, the one bit of a problem you do have when you do this. So continuous 365, 365 and tricycling, which, by the way, in this country should be 84.4, or it could be 63.4. You see why I'm saying 4? Why do you even give them a 7-day pill-free interval as in seasonally? If we're worried about efficacy, why not always have no more than 4 days? But it can start tomorrow because, as we shall see, it can be done even today before the packaging comes along. And compared with current 21/7 regimens, you get greater intrinsic efficacy, a greater margin for error for ordinary users. The rules for missed pills become ultra simple. Up to 6 tablets missed, return to pill taking. No extra precautions. Do you see the point there? Because you don't take extra precautions after a 7-day pill-free interval normally, do you? So you just go back to pill taking. No need for a flow diagram, all those complexities, what I do with missed pills. Almost never the need for you lot to give them emergency contraception. Goes out of the window. They'll never need it on this regimen. Almost never. And scheduled uterine bleeds are optional anyway. They have no known health benefits. What's not to like? Let's say that to the women out there. The benefits actually include a lesser dose. If you get your pocket calculator out, you're taking a 20 microgram pill, and you take it for 365 days, you take 7,300 micrograms of ethanol estradiol in the year. If you take the combined pill microgynon or rigivedon, in the ordinary way, because it's 30 micrograms, you use 8,300 micrograms of ethanol estradiol. So intuitively, this should be safer from the dose point of view because you're taking a lesser amount of the only dangerous stuff we deal with. Can I go on for about 3 or 4 more minutes? I won't be much longer. Okay. So the benefits are a lower dose, less headaches, less menstrual pain. That's all been shown in these RCTs. There have been 20 RCTs now of this approach, and less PMS, but we haven't got time to talk about that. Both these regimens are endorsed by WHO and nationally by the faculty. The only difference is that the Faculty of Sexual and Reproductive Health at the moment, but they are producing a new guideline and we're working on them, is that these are good choices instead. They haven't yet done what we think is that we should prioritize these choices and make the 21/7 regimen history. That's what this campaign is about. It's a change of prioritization. So let me say this. If the facts say the 21/7 regime should become history, and they do, what are the lay and medical objections to continuous use? Well, if we had time, I'd love you all to discuss this. And tomorrow when I'm in Birmingham, that's what I'll get the auditorium to do. But it's true. A lot of patients won't like no periods. Okay. But then you can sell them the 84/4 or the 63/4. Surely they can handle having 4 periods a year instead of 30. Who wants bloody periods 13 times a year when you can only have them 4 times a year? The dose worry I've reassured you about because you're using less. Does it make the COC less reversible? Not so. In a study, 99% of 365X users had their menses or got pregnant by the 90th day. No difference. So it doesn't affect reversibility. The irregular spotting problem is dealt with by teaching the patient to take her own 4-day break. And then she has like a pharmacological DNC, and that seems to clear the decks. That's why it's called the tailored pill. There is no official PIL, true. But existing ones will confuse, true. But there's a draft on the RCGP app. So all of you here can go on the RCGP app and download a little draft PIL, patient information leaflet, which you can modify for your own surgery and start doing this next week, if you wish. And then we're obviously waiting for the FBA to produce a new one. Okay, it's unlicensed, but it almost is, because running on packs is in the SPCs now for holidays and such. There's no RCT with conception as the endpoint, true, but in a trial you can't recruit bad pill takers, can you? Think about it. So there will be something like that, at least some kind of follow-up study, a cohort study. We do need that. Is the unease of some of you in this room, and certainly of our users, primarily due not so much to facts, but to long-established mindsets? We have a mindset that pills are a good method, and it's good to see those bleeds. That's what we are trying to change, and I hope some of you at least will help us to change it. This is just to show you can do unlicensed use. I've already said it almost is licensed, but if you go through this little slide here, and you read it quickly for yourselves, it's actually identical to what the GMC says in their Good Practice in Prescribing and Managing Medicines and Devices, which all of you were sent in 2013. So long as you follow that scheme, and it's in the handout which you're going to be able to download, then you are absolutely secure. There's never been a court case that has gone against a doctor who has followed that GMC advice. This is the leaflet you can download. Continuous pill taking, the 21st century way to take the pill. 2 pages of that. I'm just about to finish. A reminder how easy it is in busy lives for men as well as women to miss one's tablets. Any of you who are on anticoagulant know how easy it is to miss your tablet. Potter and Oakley showed that so well. And they also use electronic packs, which compared with the patient's diary cards, they proved that the forgetful also forget other pills they've forgotten. They're fascinating. They showed that by comparing with these electronic packs that showed whether they'd taken the pill or not. And one of the commonest errors, guess, was late restarting. Just the most dangerous you could possibly do. 7-day PFIs mean that missing just 2 pills, if missed just after the PFI and you are in the vulnerable 20 subgroup, risk conception. But if you are on continuous use, you can miss 6 or 7 pills with impunity. What's not to like? So, finally, they've always been seen as good options, but it's now time for them to be the norm, and 21/7 should become history. Straw Coal, hands up here. Do you think I'm vaguely right? Just hands up. Wow. So might you change practice? Might you work on this back home? Hands up. Talk to your colleagues. This is amazing. It's empowering. You can suggest to the user that she can self-treat for unacceptable bleeding. She takes her own 4-day gap, and that acts like a pharmacological DNC, and then she gets less bleeding thereafter. And Tereski called it, sisters are doing it for themselves. Do you remember Annie Lennox? It's very empowering. It's called the tailored pill. Okay, some prefer tricycline because they want a bit of a bleed every now and again to be sure that everything's tickety-boo. Okay, fine. And those who still want to see periods, this really is the last thing, they can have their periods, but don't give them 7-day pill-free intervals. You can give them 4-day ones. And what you do, first of all, we need the manufacturers to do, like you see in the next picture, if it'll only come, which is to produce 3 extra pills and then a 4-day placebos. But starting next week, if anybody insists on having their regular periods like their girlfriends do, all you do is go to My Pill app. There's a particular app which they can download onto their smartphone, and it says you can put in the number of active days and the number of break days you wish. So you can put in 21, but now you can put in 4. And then the app tells you every morning it's a day to take the pill or it's a day not. So easy. So everybody next week can take the pill 21/4 using My Pill app, and they never need to worry. It gives them a choice. Really are over now. Because my last remark is this. Despite everything I've said, everything, up with the Lux. Don't forget, they are even better choice than any CHC. Because, as they say, very many accidents are caused by humans, and very many humans are caused by accident. And the great advantage of the Lux is they have the right default state. You're in a non-pregnant state until you want a baby. So you must remember what this famous family planner said, contraception should be used on every conceivable occasion.
Thank you, John.
Thank you very much. If you found there was too much there, can I just let me read that one? Just read the last slide for yourselves. Our campaign has been planned to coincide with the publication of the 7th edition of our book, which you can get off Amazon. And please get in touch if you want to with my email address there, and also download those handouts. You've been a wonderful audience. Thank you very much.
Thank you, John. Thank you.